Hopefully everybody is, I don't know, recovering from whatever the hell it was we watched yesterday for 3 hours of our lives. Not great football, and we talked about it yesterday. We're here to break it down a little bit further. We've got a little bit more video stuff to check out. We're going to play, I guess, a warped form of a game while looking at some of this video stuff. But I'm Anthony. He's John. John, I missed chatting with you yesterday. I needed some commiseration with some people. I was all by my lonesome, but good to be with you here today, man, despite what happened yesterday.
Yeah, sorry I wasn't able to make that. I think a lot of things going through your mind. Luckily though, it wasn't 3 hours. I think it was like only 2 hours and 40 minutes.
That's a short game, actually. Yeah.
If there's any saving grace about a 24-point loss, it's that it goes in shorter periods amount in a shorter time frame than you would expect. But man, it's twice in 4 weeks now. It's not looking great.
It's not looking great. I mean, I use this cliche a bunch of times over the last 24 hours, be it writing or doing this video stuff. There's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, and I think there's a lot of, each passing week, early in this process, when they're 1-2, and they're 0-2, and you're kind of like, well, I mean, they'll get it going, and now we're on to week 5. We're a month into the season. We're in the month of October, and like you said, man, there are 2 games already played where the Bengals scored 3 points apiece. They have not scored a first half offensive touchdown in any games played this year. They, I don't know, man. It's staggering. And I find it hard to believe, and this is where I want to get your assessment on this. I find it hard to believe that it's just the Burrow calf situation. I think there are a myriad of factors at play here. And I think everybody's saying, when Burrow's healthy, this is going to get right back on track. I'm inclined to believe that, but there's not a lot of signs right now pointing to that just being the case, maybe right out of the bye if the calf's fully healed then.
It's the number one reason why they're in the dumpster right now. They have, I think, legitimately the worst passing offense in the league. And what's staggering about that, to me at least, because Burrow has had issues early in the season before, particularly with turnovers. He's only turned the ball over twice. He's had, I think, only like 2 or 3 maybe turnover-worthy plays. It is just a bare bones, inefficient offense. It's threatening no parts of the field beyond like the first down marker. It's very evident with just how they just attack third downs in general. Maybe it's a level of inefficient that it looks like there's just no talent on the team when that's clearly not the case, right? So Burrow's injury, I don't think, is the only thing that's plaguing this team, but having terrible quarterback play, regardless of how that comes to be, is why they're in this spot. It's cascading into other issues. I think it's fine to say that the defense is not playing at the level that they were last year. It's fine to say that the offensive line, while better, is still not particularly at the level that people expect. Those are valid observations that are just playing into this. But I think when the quarterback plays as bad as he is, and when the offense is as bad as it is in general, a lot of the other issues are compounded. But I get it though, because it's not just Joe Burrow. Like Joe Burrow's calf is taking more blame than Joe Burrow himself, and I completely understand that. But of course, like, that issue can't just resolve overnight. It's going to continue to be an issue until it isn't, and it just can't you can't snap your fingers and all of a sudden he's healed. So people naturally turn to the coaching. They turn to Zach. They turn to the designers and the planners of the offense as a whole, and they're thinking, why does this not look as easy as it could be? Why are other offenses with limited quarterback play still able to find explosive plays, still able to find spacing all over the field? Why does it look so painful for this offense to get any sort of first down outside of just the opening game script? And there's just, like you said, there's just not a lot of answers right now. And I think the fact that this is year 4 or 5 of legitimate questions about what is the plan with this offense, why were there no contingencies in the offseason, why is it taking so long to adapt to clear problems? It's why the benefit of the doubt right now is not as great as it could have been compared to years past.
So there are two things. Well, there are like 3 or 4 topics that everybody's talking about. We're going to talk about most of them on this show, but the two that really come up here is play calling, right? When you're talking about all of the issues that we're talking about, I guess I should say play calling versus execution, right? And then the other aspect of it is the run game, because you and I have talked about this a lot. It's a supplemental aspect of the offense. The offense runs through Burrow, the wide receivers. That's how this offense goes. There was more success, almost 5 yards per carry from Joe Mixon yesterday. Some of that, was maybe late in the game when the Titans were just kind of backing off. But a lot of it was in those, early drives, particularly a nice opening drive by the team. So you go, okay, now you got T. Higgins with a fractured rib. You got Joe Burrow with the calf. The only thing you're kind of regularly doing is getting some decent runs. I mean, you're not getting, home run runs all the time, but you're getting decent yardage out of it. Is it almost like, don't change the offense forever to a more balanced or running the ball a little bit more type of situation, but maybe temporarily, if you're talking about overcoming some of these injuries, does it just need to be, because the only guys putting up numbers and doing a lot of positive things on offense right now is when you feed Jamar Chase the ball, 12 catches on 14 targets against the Rams. He had 7 for 70 something yesterday. And then Mixon, kind of chewing up some runs here and there off RPO and different style of runs out of shotgun. So, I mean, those are the two real big talking points as we talk about the struggles of the offense. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm hearing. And I know that's what a lot of people are engaging in.
I think part of it comes down to defenses are just not scared right now, and nor should they be. And theoretically, though, if you were to run the ball with a decent amount of success, like the Bengals were successful running the ball yesterday. I think there was like 67% success rate when Mixon carried the ball, and the Titans didn't care. Like they didn't stack the box. They didn't put any more attention on there. They just they just stayed back, because again, like if you want to just charge down the field 5, 6, 7 yards at a time, defenses will take that if they don't have an iota of respect for when you drop back and pass. I think that's the biggest thing, because someone in the comments said like the offense had trouble last year, and I think the same troubles are existing. It's just that Burrow's Superman ability was able to kind of mask that to an extent. When he's on and he's precise and he's processing at top speeds, the structure of I think the offense in itself can still function. But defenses, even last year, they didn't care at all when the Bengals ran the ball, and they don't this year either, even if the run game was fine against Tennessee. So you can spam run out of pistol, out of shotgun, whatever you want, and you can just exhaust all of your concepts and all of your ideas from that very limited box that you're constraining yourself in. But until the defense actually starts showing signs of respecting it, it's just really hard to open things up in ways that other teams like the 49ers and the Dolphins can. And I think on top of that, I mean, we talked about it in the offseason too, like at running back and tight end, the Bengals lost some guys and they replaced them, but they still lack that explosion in speed at some of these positions. Like Irv Smith's injury, he wasn't playing particularly great. And I think Tanner Hudson's been fine in his place, but they still don't have any dynamicism at tight end. They don't have it at the running back position either, out of the backfield as a pass catcher. These complementary receivers outside Jamar Chase, like T. Higgins has kind of been playing like almost at half speed this year. Tyler Boyd looks like he's getting up there in age. There's not a ton of speed and explosion to thread in the second and third levels of these defenses that the Bengals are playing. and it's just leading to just the same defensive looks. And every time, I swear, like even watching that Rams game, the 1 or 2 times when the Rams were in single high looks, they immediately spammed to the boundary on a vertical route. Like every time they get these looks, the Bengals waste no time to actually do it. They're fiending to try to do these concepts, and defenses just aren't getting them. And I think it's easier to win against those 2 high looks that they did last year when you have plus athletes, and they don't have that right now. And unfortunately, I think it's making play calling a little bit difficult, more difficult than it should be. Like it shouldn't be this bad, but I think we're just trying to explain some context as to why even some alternate plans may not have been working so far.
This is how I know you and I have been working together a long time, because you and I are on a good similar wavelength when it comes to what you were just talking about. And I talked about it on the post-game show yesterday. This felt like a game where the Bengals needed a dynamic tight end. This was the game. It felt like when things aren't working well and you're able to run the ball, you can sprinkle in potentially. I know it's difficult to do play action out of shotgun and do that effectively a lot, but you could sprinkle in the occasional play action pass, get the ball out quickly, maybe across the middle to a dynamic tight end. When that field shrunk on that opening drive in the red zone, having a dynamic player at tight end, that's where that player comes in handy. And you look back at the 2 last draft classes, there were a lot of tight ends that not only the Bengals showed interest in, but there were a lot of tight ends they could have invested in and, had another weapon. And I thought about it this way today, John, because, we talked about, well, maybe they shift to the run game a little bit more. Well, they've got the wide receivers. The NFL has done, and kudos to the Bengals for what they've built on offense, but a lot of teams have really built now their systems and their defensive players around guarding teams like what the Dolphins have, what the Bengals have. They've done that. And so that's why the Bengals last year, when they went to a lot of the two deep safety looks opposing defenses, that's why the Bengals did more of the shorter passing and that sort of thing. They adjusted, right? And so now this year, it feels like that's even revved up a little bit more. I know the Browns kind of a different animal in that one, but it feels like that has even been harder for them this year to adjust to what defenses are doing. And that's where I still look at that position of tight end. And granted, I still think Irv Smith can have a decent year in this offense if he's healthy and out there. But I just feel like that the Bengals kind of built their offense and they stood a bit still. They added 2 wide receivers that are backup guys, but they kind of kept things as they were. And they had an opportunity to add a tight end. And this game, to me, really spotlighted that need for a dynamic player there, as you kind of alluded to.
It's a copycat league in a lot of ways, and in some areas it seems like the Bengals have been slow to adapt to what has been working across the league. You watch the 49ers and Dolphins, and Tua's in the pistol constantly, and there's a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. That's almost exclusively what the 49ers run. It's a lot of condensed formations, and it just packs the defense close to the line of scrimmage, but then both those teams also have the athletes to get horizontal and off of play fakes or RPOs or whatever type of concepts that you want to run to just freeze the defense for a second. When you add more gaps there, it creates more of a responsibility and a strain on the defense, and you can run more things off of that. The Bengals, I think, were under center once this game. It was the first time all year where Burrow was under center, and he looked like he was running through molasses trying to get out from under center. Like they've tried to put him in the pistol more, I think, to run more of the running concepts that they want. But they were supposed to be more under center this year, and they were supposed to have more play action from under center, and they were supposed to open up the offense and create more explosive plays from that. That has yet to come because of what Burrow can and can't do. But also, to your point with the tight ends, like they don't run a lot of 12 personnel because that's not the strength of their team, and that's just a lack of personnel at that position group. But that's where a lot of the NFL is going now. And until the Bengals have any speed there, teams just aren't going to respect it. They're going to view it as, oh, this is probably just a run. And more times than not, the Bengals run under 12 personnel than they pass. It's another evolution that they need to take, and it's probably not going to happen this year.
The defense. What are you making of that there? I mean, I try and give them a pass that, hey, they're out there a lot. The offense is sputtering. They're getting tired. Blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, first drive of the second half, what was it, a 15 play drive they let up, something like that. They are susceptible, and they are not as stout against the run this year. And granted, they have they're second worst in terms of rushing yards allowed from a defensive unit overall this year. And granted, they played two quarterbacks who can run, in Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson, but they are having problems tackling. They are having problems getting a guy to the ground. Look at Derrick Henry's runs yesterday. And granted, it is Derrick Henry. He's huge. He's massive. He's strong, of course. But it's uncharacteristic from what we've seen the last couple of years in terms of run defense. And so there's just these problem areas where I know a lot of us want to be optimistic, and there's reason for that optimism to say, hey, they'll get it right. They'll get it right. It's still kind of early. They'll get it right. But there are just kind of some really problematic elements on both sides of the ball occurring that it's going to take a pretty big change for their season to make it a change for the positive.
For starters, I'm not really one to these guys are professionals, and offense and defense they're in different meetings. Like, they have different mindsets and everything. Like, they're on the same team, but how bad an offense does shouldn't make a defense bad. But when I think it happens over and over and over again, and it just snowballs into what we saw on Sunday, I think it did kind of have some type of mental impact. Just almost apathy at just no help given to them. And all of a sudden it's just 3 straight scoring drives in the second quarter. And all of a sudden you're down like 17, 16, whatever the hell the deficit was before halftime. It did seem like it was kind of taking a toll on them, because that was a very uncharacteristic. Like, even despite the Browns kind of running all over them in the second half of that game, when the offense did nothing, even when they kind of got caught off surprise by the Ravens, this game stood out in the sense of, you don't see the Bengals miss this many tackles. This was a reload the defense under Luna Rumbo type performance from 2019. Yeah. We haven't seen that in a long time. I'm willing to say that the Titans, we talked about how the Titans can win this game, and they can produce some explosive plays off play action. That's exactly what Ryan Tannehill did. When Derrick Henry gets any type of space at all, that's the amount of time and space he needs to accelerate and become Derrick Henry. We saw him do exactly that. The Bengals lost at the front level, though. They had bad games from Zach Carter. DJ Reader was just kind of pedestrian out there. DJ Reader's always played well against Derrick Henry. He didn't this time. Trey Hendrickson, he had a couple of pressures here and there, but he had an amazing mismatch against Andre Dillard, and he rarely impacted the pocket against Ryan Tannehill. It was a not good performance from that defensive line, and when that defensive line gets blown off the ball like that, it led to some bad things. And I'm not making an excuse for like how bad the offense was, and that's why the defense kind of fell flat like that. But I think at a certain point, it does kind of take a toll on you, and like, oh, we're just getting no help out here, and it's just almost kind of deflating, especially when everything's going bad.
Yeah, and that it's been a theme. It's not just for the day, right? I mean, it's been for the season, but it's a weird combination with where the Bengals are record wise and some of the things when you look at, a recipe for success for a team, right? The defense has been, creating some turnovers. They're, I think, tied for the 5th most in sacks with a bunch of other teams. But I mean, they've been getting the quarterback to the ground, which was a bit of a problem last year. They've been pressuring as you mentioned earlier, the offense is not, they're taking care of the ball for the most part, right? It's not like it's fumbles everywhere and Burrow has another 4 interception game or anything. I mean, they're taking care of the ball. They're just not scoring any points. And it's this weird, like, you're doing some major things as a team well, but it's not leading to any kind of success. It's very, very strange to me.
That first drive too, like for the offense, it wasn't anything special that they were doing. I don't like their screen game was working better than it had been, and they're down, and they're just their gap scheme, offset duo run game, like it was working, and they were pushing the Titans back, and they got into the red zone, and then Burrow forced one into T. Higgins, trying to get him a touchdown, Tennessee again. and they stuck to 3. And I think that was pretty significant for the Titans defense to kind of get punched in the mouth there early on and only give up 3 points. Seemed like if they scored a touchdown, they might have some more confidence going into the game. But man, the offensive line too, like that Titans defensive line, like we talked about, it's no joke. It's no joke. And there were so many times when they had Simmons and 2 other guys lined up on one side of the formation, and they just ran stunt game, and they overloaded the Bengals offensive line and the blitzes too. Like this it's probably the biggest thing when you're talking about how the Titans pass rush impacted the Bengals. Burrow is typically a lot more decisive to get the ball out quickly when he knows that he's overmatched and there's a fire blitz or whatever. And as he's gotten quote unquote healthier with that calf, we've seen him start to hold the ball a little bit longer, but he's not doing anything really when he's holding the ball long. And that led to some unnecessary hits that he took and led to some sacks. And it's part of why the offense ultimately failed in this game. But that was, again, everything that went well for the Titans was predictable in the sense of if the Titans win, this is how they win. They didn't win by surprising the Bengals in any way, shape, or form. They just performed to their strengths 100 times better than the Bengals did to them.
So there are a lot of I could pin all. I mean, there's at least been, I don't know, 8 to a dozen so far in our live chats about. By the way, we have a lot of live viewers, which is awesome. Good to see all of you. A lot of comments about sit Joe. Sit Joe. He's not healthy. Sit Joe. He's not healthy. I mean, I understand the output has been the output. Like I mentioned, the 2 3-point games, the last time they hit the field and the first time they hit the field this year. So I understand the sentiment, but I mean, if he's saying he's telling people he's good to go, I don't know, man. I mean, that it's kind of an indictment of who else they maybe have in the building. If Joe, either he's a lot healthier than we all believe, and he's just being ineffective for right now. He's in a bad stretch, or I mean, it's an indictment of the other players in the building, and they believe that a less than 100% Joe, wherever he is, 75%, 85%, whatever, gives them by far the best opportunity to win instead of AJ McCarron, instead of Jake Browning or Reed Sinnett, who was, I believe, released off the practice squad today. So, I mean, I don't really ascribe to, sitting Joe right now. If it's, again, unless there's something that comes up that says, this is something that could lead to a severe injury in it. That seems to not be the prognosis necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, he got hit plenty of times in this game. He got back up. There was no sign of him, kind of limping or anything like that. It's obviously, it's to say it's an indictment on the backups. It's almost like not even a negative. It's just a recognition that Jake Browning or H. McCarron aren't close to Joe Burrow, and that's 100% true. The problem is, I'm not going to say it's hard. Well, I am going to say it's hard to get worse than what it is out there, because what it is bottom of the league stuff. I think Joe Goodberry kind of said it the best. Like, regardless of whether or not Burrow is 100% right now, he clearly isn't. Regardless if he's close or not, it does seem like the Bengals don't want to waste a week where Burrow could feel like himself again and could play like himself again, and then have Jake Browning out there, and they can probably expect how Jake Browning or AJ McCarron. Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, the inverse of that works too. At this point, you're running out of time. And if you want to potentially waste another week where your quarterback is in there and he's just not performing up to his ability, and there's only one real explanation about it, it's like at a certain point, you kind of made your bed by saying this guy is good enough to play and his limitations aren't holding back the offense. You kind of made that bed when you said that, and if you go back on it, then you admit your own mistake. But at that point, then you can potentially get something different out of it. I don't know. It seems like if they were to sit him for a week, that they would have to sit him for multiple weeks, and I just don't think that they're going to do that now if he's continuing to play. And by the way, the more that he does play, and the more that he does play and doesn't suffer a setback, the calf does end up getting stronger and healing better. It's just that process needs to be expedited extremely, and that's just not possible.
Yeah, I think they're banking on, first of all, Zach was asked if Joe Burrow, I believe it was from Marshall Kramsky, who's one of the beat guys for the covering the Bengals there. He asked Zach, is Joe Burrow going to play this week? He's all, yeah. Almost surprised at the question, I think was the caption that was put out there. So for those who want him to sit, it appears he is not going to. And my belief is not only because of that obvious statement that Joe's going to play this week. And by the way, selfishly, I'm going to that game. So, planning this trip and going to that game and not seeing him play would be kind of a bummer for me personally. But regardless, I think the Bengals, to your point a little bit, John, they are writing this out, this stretch, the next 3 weeks. They probably view these next 2 games as pretty winnable, even though they'll be tough. They're scrappy teams, the Cardinals and the Seahawks. And then they're going to use that bye week and really hope that after the bye week, this calf thing will be mostly, if not fully, behind him. And then, you hit that next tough stretch of your schedule and all systems go. Hopefully I assume if the plan is that Burrow's playing this week, I assume they are using these next 3 weeks as kind of the critical part to say, hey, let's scrape together a couple of wins, get to 500, get into that bye, let Joe rest that week. And then hopefully by then come out of that healthy, T included.
Yeah. This is just, it's a new level of adversity that they have to go through, because last year, like there was more, I think, not turmoil, but like kind of close to it in the locker room than I think people kind of know about just the dysfunction of the offense and the frustration as to why it wasn't producing the way that it was. And it took a mid-season type of revelation for them to kind of get back on track. But now it's just, it's a lot of the same similar issues that kind of stem from the management of what's going on with Burrow and just the offense. And if they don't get it sorted out in these 2 weeks, I do wonder how this kind of snowballs, because the season can get off the rails extremely quickly after this bye. You have San Francisco, Buffalo, 2 divisional games, and at Jacksonville. Like, that's a gauntlet. And going into the season, you thought this is the stretch where they need to build on these wins before they entered that. But of course, the Bengals always work in the opposite, right? They always stumble early on against some quote unquote winnable teams, and then they kind of catch their fire in big moments against good teams. But right now, they don't have that. They have no trust in them getting to that point of rattling off these wins out of nowhere if they don't sort this out right now. And the biggest problem is you just don't have that much trust in the designers and the architects of this offense with a quarterback who's by the way, like, not only just not healthy, but I did see some people in the comments section say something that I kind of agree with. The more that he's playing out here with shoddy footwork, the more you worry that he's going to start developing bad habits. And he talked about that as to why he stopped throwing early on in his recovery process, because he didn't want to fall into having bad footwork. But we're still seeing it in these games, and you have to be concerned about the more that he plays with these limitations and the more that he plays with that footwork, the less likely that he can get back to his full form even when he is healthy.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a fair assessment of that. You definitely don't want to have him develop bad habits. It just seems weird that we're talking about all this stuff, because he has been such, I'm seeing comments about, you don't want to get Joe into his own head and, bad habits. It's just stuff we're talking about with Joe Burrow that you never thought you'd have to talk about, right? It's just has not been who he has shown us to be since his senior year at LSU. And I guess an injury can do that kind of stuff to you. And we've got a little bit of proof here, and we're going to play a little game here. And this game is going to be called "What Do You See Here?" And we will put this up. We've got videos queued up of all 3 of the sacks against Burrow yesterday, against from the Titans. There's a couple of elements, and I want to get. I kind of looked at these through and found some specific observations. I want to get your take, and obviously for those who are watching in the live chat, if you want to give your 2 cents on what you see here, because this goes into the conversation of potentially bad habits, uncharacteristic things, or ailing calf. And so I guess that's kind of what I want to bring up, and we can cue these up a couple of times. They're about 15 seconds each or something, but what again, I mean, is because there's a lot of talk about his mobilities being affected and he can't avoid the sacks and all that. That might be the case. I saw a little bit of that yesterday, John, personally, and you'll see one in particular that shows that. But I saw either also a lack of recognition of where the pressure is coming from or where the blitzers are coming from, and or maybe almost an arrogance in a way of Joe deciding to still take a shot, take a shot from the defender, but also take a shot down the field and it not working out. So here's the first one. This is the one that ended up in that wacky play where it was a bad call. They called it a fumble initially because it went way up in the air and it was an incomplete pass. So here's this first one. There was someone being blitzed. I think it was a linebacker off the edge here. And so we'll cue this up. Here it is. They do the RPO. The guy's going to come off the edge here on the outside, and he doesn't really recognize it. And you'll get another angle of it here. And again, that should have been a penalty, right? With the helmet there, should have been a penalty. But and I can cue it up if you want to see it, John. But did you see? Just it almost felt like he didn't either see the pressure or he saw it and said, "Screw it, I don't care. I see a shot down the field. I'm going to take it." That to me wasn't a mobility issue. That was just staying in the pocket and try and make a throw. So that one to me does not fall into a mobility calf issue.
Yeah, if you want to talk about internal clock, that was a case where that wasn't necessarily the case. Like if it was an internal clock issue, then he would have probably released this a little bit sooner. It's just 1, 2, 3, 5-step drop actually, and takes another hitch. The ball might have to be out like a half second sooner than that because he takes that extra hitch. But yeah, I think that's just him locking downfield, trying to get the ball down the field as part of that concept, and him just not recognizing it.
Again, kind of uncharacteristic though, right? I mean, he's usually so decisive. He usually knows exactly where he's going with the ball, and just uncharacteristic. So I didn't see that as a mobility issue that a lot of people are saying. No. That's been the big plague. Here's the second one. I think this one also wasn't one that was the mobility issue for me. This was let's cue this one up here. Coming off of the outside. That, again, just didn't sense the pressure. Orlando Brown gets beat off the edge there. Just didn't seem to sense the pressure coming off the other side. So, again, not really a mobility issue or a situation with that. It's didn't feel the pressure, didn't see the pressure, whatever that case may be. And, again, holding the ball and looking to go downfield. It's slowed down a little bit, so it's exaggerated in terms of the amount of time he's holding the ball. But, again, that's not a calf issue, right? I mean, to me, I'm not – he's there. He's sitting there ready to make a throw. It's not like he's trying to scramble away from a lot of pressure and can't do it.
Can I see that again, actually? Because it looked like he kind of pumped it.
So he gets beat.
From that, it's almost like I think it might have been a double move down the field if he's doing that pump. Mm-hmm. That's a bad rep from Orlando Brown. I'll give him that. And it was also on his blind side. Yeah, I would say it's more. I say it's probably more bad protection and just a long developing play down the field. Again, like I don't know, I don't know if the timing of that route would have allowed him to kind of step up there because that was at the top of his drop, and that is something that quarterbacks have to kind of take into account for. Like tackles are just protecting you up until the top of your drop, but Orlando Brown kind of got beat around the edge there at the top of the drop, so. Stepping up would have definitely helped. I just don't know if the concept down the field would have allowed him of that.
I that's a good point. I think that's more of a protection thing rather than a Joe Burrow issue or a calf issue or anything like that. That just was in a bad week against a good line, but a terrible timed week for Orlando Brown to have his first bad game with the Bengals. Got beat a couple of times, and that play included. All right, let's look at the last one that we've got here, the third one. This to me, I don't want to. This one to me felt like maybe a hindered mobility issue because you got Key coming and usually he kind of can dance out of that stuff. And the guy kind of just grabbed at his ankles. You can kind of see just grabs. Now, maybe he doesn't always get out of that. I'll play it one more time here. Maybe he doesn't always get out of that, but we've seen him get out of way more precarious stuff. So to me, this might point a little bit to the calf issue. Again, Brown getting pushed back by, I think that's Arden Key there. gets around him, and right there you kind of feel like he usually steps out of that kind of thing. So that might have been a little bit more of a mobility thing there. If I guess going to play armchair quarterback.
100%. Like we've seen him take off from that point, either stepping up or just stepping out to the right. There are other times here. Like I think there was one play when the Titans had like it was like a wide front from them. They had 2-3 techniques and 2 wide nines, and there was just a chance for Burrow to step up and run, and he was hesitant to do that because he knew he can't. Like I think it was one of the first plays on the first drive where he converted the first third down of the game, or the first down of the game, and he ran like 2 yards. And he immediately slid once he knew he got past the first down. So, clearly, there's a mobility issue, and that was definitely one. And by the way, for people who think that he got destroyed this game, Burrow was officially sacked twice. He was hit 4 times. So they were hard, no mistake about it. And there were definitely some miscues, particularly with the interior of the offensive line and their communication with stunts. But don't act like this was the 2021 playoff game where he was sacked 9 times. The Titans got in there and they stopped some drives. But Burrow didn't necessarily get beat up in this game. That's a false narrative.
Here's the other thing, too. I talked about it a tiny bit, but the more I think about it, the Bengals have been talked about a lot. The Bengals have won a lot of big games the last couple of years, and the Bengals have let their opponents know about it the past couple of years. And with all of that success comes a target on your back, and you're going to get teams' best shots. And this Tennessee team remembers that divisional game that they lost. This Tennessee team remembers, I know we love it, but probably remembers the clip of Ted Karras walking off the field. So they were pissed. They played emotionally charged football, and I don't feel that the Bengals maybe matched that intensity. I mean, there are a lot of errors and offensive inefficiency and everything else we've talked about, but from the non-X's and O's standpoint, the Titans played an emotionally charged game at home, and I rewatched that opening drive at the end there. I mean, that crowd, I know there are a lot of Bengals fans in attendance. That crowd was loud, particularly at the beginning of that game. So kind of a perfect storm.
When people get kind of transfixed on their own team, right? This was the game where the Bengals were supposed to put it all together. And I think there's a report from Dinah Rossini about this offense is so close to just taking off, right? Titans lost by 20 on the road last week, and then they're home underdogs under Mike Vrabel. Yep. It's not a situation where the Titans just roll over necessarily. The other team gets paid too. And yes, the Bengals have talent on this team where they shouldn't lose by 24. I'm not saying they should lose by 24, but weird stuff in the NFL happens. Zach Wilson outplayed Patrick Mahomes. There's nothing more weird than that, right? So the Titans dominating in ways that is not foreign to anyone who knows the Titans is not the strangest thing to me. It's embarrassing for sure. If you're the Bengals, it's embarrassing to try out that offense for a 4th straight week and just pray that your defense has a performance that they haven't had, by the way, since 1997. I'm talking about 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, and holding the opponent to under 20 points. That hadn't happened since 1997. But look at that, positive stats from the 90s Bengals. If you need that type of defensive performance to compete with your offense, it's not sustainable. And the Titans took advantage of this because the Titans still have talent on the defensive front. They have winning formulas to attack the Bengals offensive line. That clearly worked again at crucial times here. And they just did nothing but run the same defense over and over because the Bengals had no counters to it.
Rob Duncan, a good friend of the show. We see him in a lot of the live chats. AC is wearing the same shirt as yesterday. Depression has arrived. Hey, I have multiple of these. These are like workout shirts. I have multiple of them. I promise. I don't just roll around in the same shirt for 24, 36 hours, Rob. I promise. I'm not that gross of a guy. But let's just kind of cap it off here. We usually kind of try and keep these around 45 minutes, and we're getting up there. There was some different news and notes. I mentioned the Reed Sinnett getting cut off the practice squad there. So that's one big news. And I know you wanted to talk about some quotes from T. Higgins today in light of his injury.
T. Higgins it's confirmed now, he suffered a rib fracture. And it was on that play where it was almost a catch on the sideline. He just kind of landed on his side. He was taken out of the game after that and did not return. So he missed about a half of play. Fortunately, though, one rib, it's definitely painful. He's going to have to sleep differently. He's going to have to manage through the pain. but it is something that he expects to be able to play through. If not this week, then definitely next week. I'm sure they'll manage him and limit him in practice this week, and he might just be a game time decision, but he wants to play through it. And I think that's commendable, especially because he has not been particularly himself this year. People want to point to a contract extension because of that. I don't know. All I know is that he could use this injury to just sit and just take all the time that he needs. He wants to play through it. I think that's worthy of praise, and we'll see if he ends up doing it against Arizona.
Yeah, there was unfortunately, I don't remember his name, but he's got a pretty prominent Twitter following as a sports injury doctor. Not David Chow, another name out there. I forget his name, unfortunately, but he kind of put out some stuff today that got circulated about both timeline of healing and everything for Burrow's injury and T. Higgins. Is basically both about 2 weeks in terms of, fully healed or whatever. So that goes back to what I was saying a little bit on the Burrow side with, 2 weeks plus the bye, then you're hopefully back in business and this thing's behind you. Again, I'll have to find that tweet if I can find it, but it seemed to be 2 weeks by his timeline of the injuries and everything. And he's got some good credentials and whatnot. So I would, I tend to believe him. He seems like a smarter guy than I. So I tend to believe him in terms of turnaround time and everything. So what else do we got? I guess let's talk about this real quick while we've got a couple minutes before we get out of here. What'd you make of and I played him on the post-game show yesterday. What'd you make of the post-game quotes from guys like Joe Mixon, guys like Jamar Chase, different levels of frustration, confidence? It's kind of a weird mix of everything between the words spoken and maybe not spoken by those guys.
Yeah, it was definitely all over the place, and as expected. I think when you get shellacked like that, especially twice in a month, it kind of just makes you just stop and wonder, and maybe you don't have as clear of an answer as to why. Like, there were definitely discernible things as to what went wrong, but the team practiced and prepared, and they just got embarrassed, and it sucks, and it's tough to kind of respond directly off of that, especially when you're now 1-3 and you have more questions than you have answers. People definitely took the Chase soundbite and quote and ran with it, and it's not even that much out of character, I think, for Chase, because he just kind of speaks his mind, and that sometimes leads to quotes like this. But I think the full quote, I think, provides needed context with it too. Because someone just asked him, like what happens when you're not open and teams are keen in on you? It's like, I'm always open. I'm always effing open, because he's Jamar Chase, and he believes that even when teams are keen in on him and there's bracketed coverage, even when there's tight man coverage, if you throw the ball his way, he's one of the few players in the NFL that can win those one-on-ones. He did it against the Rams. Like, the Rams certainly had a lot of attention on him. So 12 catches for 144 yards. There was one play in particular. It was a deep, out or comeback or bench route, whatever you want to call it. And the Rams had safety over the top, and Burrow put it right where he needed to, and Chase made the catch on the sideline. Like, it's a proven concept of targeting Jamar Chase, even when there is extra attention on him. And I think he just wanted to reiterate that in that moment. And if nothing else, he's confident in his own ability, and they definitely need all of his ability to get out of this rut.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of temporarily adopted the mindset of, carries wise, upwards of 20 for Joe Mixon, and targets 12 to 15 a game to Chase, because those are the guys who are consistently, giving you the big plays or the positive plays. And then when you have T. Higgins with the fractured rib, Joe Burrow with the calf, all of that, I mean, maybe just feed the two guys that are working, find ways to get them the ball. It's kind of what they did against the Rams. And finally, the Rams started clamping down on Mixon towards the end there. He wasn't having as much success as he was maybe early in that game. So I don't know. I that's kind of where I would go with it. I didn't read so far into it saying, oh, there's a strife between Chase and Burrow and all that kind of stuff. I didn't read that far into it. It was more just, the level of frustration is palpable. Joe Mixon showed me a level of confidence with his quote in response to some of the questions there, which was really good to see. So, I think adjustments need to be made. They're going to need to, even if temporarily, reinvent themselves a bit again and find ways to be productive. And I know some people didn't want to hear it about Burrow playing and he should rest and all that. Well, that doesn't seem to be the plan. He's going to play until otherwise noted, and that's going to be that. What else do we need to get to before we drop the mic and head on out of here, my friend?
Nothing in terms of like notes or news. Like we had Cam Taylor-Britt also suffer. I think he suffered a shoulder injury first on like one of the Titans' first touchdowns. And it was kind of a scarier hit than I think
Gross
people.
looking.
Yeah. So he suffered a concussion, and he obviously didn't return. So he's going to be in the protocol today. But unfortunately, even before that, he was not having the best of games. He gave up a long play on the sideline. I think the first explosive play to the Titans. There was a report from, I believe it was a WLWT reporter, who said that Irv Smith is on track for returning this week. So we should see him continue to be listed on the practice report, but he should at some point this week, I think, start practicing. So kind of getting healthier, kind of not, just kind of the ebbs and flows of being in the middle of the NFL season.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a blessing where the bye week falls, I guess, comparative to some of these injuries and everything that the Bengals are going through right now. But they gotta start righting the ship, and if they can get back to 500, get into that bye, and then start building some momentum coming into that tough part of that next schedule you talked about earlier, that's going to be a big boost. But they got to do the work and they got to execute. So that is the key. What do you got for us on our way out, my friend?
Nothing much. I think I was kind of saying it earlier though. This team was 2-3 last year. They were 2-2, but then they were at 2-3. They can get to 2-3 this year with a win here, but I think the record is almost like, it's not secondary because it's all that matters. But right now they're at a tipping point. I think more so than in years past, where there was so much expectations about this team in particular. They had a huge roadblock or bump in the road with Burrow's calf, but I think a lot of internal skepticism may be brewing right now between players and coaches. And I think some of that kind of leaked into what they were saying after the game. I remember when this team was not good at all with Taylor, and every week we would say, is this the biggest game of Zach Taylor's career? I know a lot of fans also remember that too. I think this 2-week stretch is so important to keep that locker room together, because if there are no improvements, adjustments made that lead to tangible results, regardless of what you have to deal with, lack of faith will start to show more and more. And again, once you exit that bye week, maybe the bye week does help out with everything, but once you exit that bye week, things get really real. And it's at that point where you have nowhere left to hide, and then you're just basically ending the season at that point. These next 2 weeks matter so much for Zach Taylor and his staff, and just making the whatever adjustments need to be made. They need to just empty out all the cards at this point, because there's just no more time that they can waste.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that for my mic drop. You and I have been on a similar wavelength. We didn't talk about this stuff really before the show, before we took the air or anything, but we've been on a similar wavelength today. I've got an article coming up on CincyJungle.com where it's like, the old good, bad, and ugly. And what you said there really rang true. And I think one of the lines I put in there, it's not up yet, but it will be posted pretty soon, I think. One of the lines I put in there was something to the effect of these next 2 weeks are incredibly important, and incredibly important really not just for this season alone. I think it's important for this season to get them on the right track and turn this thing around. But I also think, if things start to derail, you got these post-game quotes and all this kind of stuff. And you're also kind of like, man, this kind of felt like 21, you arrived early and you went really, really far and almost had the championship. Last year, you were coming back, and now, that was kind of expected, a little bit of another deep run because the team was good. Now this was supposed to be the year. And if there's a major hiccup or speed bump in this quote championship window that the Bengals have open with their quarterback and this cast of characters, if this season goes awry, of course it's bad for this season in general, right? But also it's kind of damaging to the outlook a little bit in the next couple of years. So again, I don't like to over exaggerate either about the importance of a game, this game, that game, that sort of thing. But I do think this is a very to the bye the next couple of games. And it's also because, I mean, they're tough teams. They're going to be tough, Cardinals and Seahawks, but these appear to be winnable games as well. So they need to take care of business.
Other than the play, or other than the shooting, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're going to get out of here. Before we do, want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel, where you can get on the audio side of things, where you can get our show. You can get Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, Matt Minnick's Coach Speak and Chalk Talk, as well as 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin, all those on the audio side. And of course, if you like seeing the video where you can watch the clips that we put up here, no idea if the NFL is going to slap us on the wrist, probably will, but the YouTube channel is underneath John, and by that Cincy Jungle icon, click the show icon to subscribe, click the bell to be notified when new content is live and when it's available, when we go live, all that kind of stuff. And then of course, you got to give a thumbs up to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, along with about 80,000 others. We stream live there, so check it all out. Go to cincyjungle.com for your news, opinions, analysis, podcasts, all of that. And of course, got to go check out, John put up a really cool article today. I did read that on azsports.com, John, with the offensive issues and that sort of thing. So go check out what he and that crew is doing over there with all the great work. Appreciate all of you tuning in live. We had a lot of viewers across different platforms. So good to see all of you, whether it was YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Appreciate it. We will be back later this week with our preview of the Cardinals, and we'll have some fun with that. John, try and have a better rest of your week than we have experienced in the early portion of this.
It'll be much better than Sunday. I promise you that.
Hard to be. Yeah. It's hard to get worse than that. Yeah. Take care, man.
See ya.